Hello, Kaiser United. My name is Nick Crispino, and I am sitting here with Yoko Higuchi. He is a New York-based independent filmmaker, cinema enthusiast, and the reason why I asked him to come here today, he was a production assistant on Shin Godzilla. Yoko, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Let's just jump right into it. Let's start right at the beginning. How did you get the job?
That is a story that I've been asked many times because it is kind of a impossible sort of story if you think about it, which I often think it's not as impressive as everyone thinks it is. But so I heard about Godzilla 2016, which was the working title at the time, was in production, and I thought, oh, cool, they're making a new Japanese Godzilla movie. That's amazing. But I never thought about joining the production at that stage. But then it was announced that Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi were the directors of Shin Godzilla, and I'm a big Evangelion fan, and I've admired Anno's work and Higuchi's work for years, so it was a dream come true moment, and as a filmmaker I thought I had to see them work, I had to be under them, and I had to work in their vicinity and see how they make movies, and so I drafted a letter to Toho in English, because I can't read or write Japanese, unfortunately. And I had my mother translate the letter in Japanese, and I sent both of them via email and physical mail.
Two-pronged attack.
Yeah, exactly. If one doesn't work, maybe the other will.
Yeah.
But I really, when I wrote that letter, I really had this thought of, I'm just gonna do it just to do it. But in my head, I thought, it's not happening. This is just a shot in the dark. I'm just going to shoot my shot and it will most likely not happen, so I'm not going to put my expectations on it as much. And 2 months go by and I've forgotten about the letter completely. And then at some point I get an email in Japanese and the email address of Toho on it. And I can't read Japanese, but it did say Gojira on it. So I was like, oh, this is...
In English or Japanese?
In Japanese. And I thought, oh, okay, this is something. And I clicked the email, all in Japanese. I cannot read it. So I rushed home and I said, Mom, what does this say? And she read it and a look of shock came over her face. And I said, what's in the email? And she said, they want to do a Skype interview with you about the prospect of being a production assistant. And at first I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then the thought came in where I went, oh, I have to do basically a job interview in a language that's not my first, that I'm still learning a lot. So it was first excitement then fear set in. And I did the interview and I spoke with the line producer and some of the other guys at the office. And off the bat, on the Zoom call, behind them was just a wall of storyboards from the movie, and I was already losing my mind. And then they said, okay, we'll contact you back in a few days and we'll let you know. And I said, thank you. And then the call ended, and that was around 8 p.m. because that would be 9 a.m. in the morning for them. And then I'm about to go to bed, and usually when people go to bed, you check your phone, Facebook, emails, that kind of thing. And I just refreshed my email, and I got 2 emails that were both in Japanese, also from Toho. And I was like, okay, read this, Mom, please. I cannot read this. And another look of shock goes in her face. And I said, what? And this time she just did not respond for at least 10 seconds or so. She just went completely silent. And she said just the 2 words, you got in. Or you got in, 3 words. Yeah. You got in. And I didn't react. I couldn't smile. I couldn't move. I just sort of...
Just totally catatonic.
I was completely stunned, almost like, this is a dream, right? Hit my face. Wake up, this is not real. And yeah, I got in. And then the second email was a map to Toho Studios and instructions on getting a guest pass and stuff. So it really was a miraculous sort of dream come true moment where it was a shot in the dark and I did not think this was going to happen, but somehow it worked.
So you get the job, you go to Japan, and what was did they just throw you right into it, or was it there was prep time? So all right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go through a training phase.
It was a mix of both, because filming hasn't started yet when I walked into the production office. I left New York in late July, and I had my pre-meet. I guess my trial day before my first official work day, which was August 1st, that was my first work day. And then on August 1st, me and 4 other co-workers of mine had to read the script in the office. And it said, actually, at that point, it already said Shin Godzilla on the script in Japanese. And I get the script, it's my copy, and then I sit down and everyone else is reading it, and then I go, oh, I cannot read this. What I'm so fortunate about is everyone on the Shin Godzilla staff was so kind to me. They understood that I couldn't read or write Japanese, I can only speak Japanese, so they were very gracious about that, and I can't thank them enough for being so accommodating. So they just made me watch some Shinji Higuchi movies that I haven't seen yet. So I sat in the office with a little TV and I watched Japan Sinks, which I didn't get to see at the time yet. And then I also went to the theater to watch his Attack on Titan movie as well. So it was more so of me getting accustomed to the office and the people. And
getting familiar with Higuchi's work.
Exactly, yes. And then for that first month of August, we went on a bunch of location scouts, and it was very low key at that time. It wasn't busy. It was, for me at least, mostly 8-hour days. It was very kind of quiet. And then once filming began, that's when things started to ramp up a lot.
What were your primary duties? Like, what unit were you in? Because I've heard you on different podcasts talking about your story. I know you mentioned that there were 3 units, like an A, B, and C.
Yes.
You were on, if I'm not mistaken, B?
Yes, I was originally in A in the beginning, because B unit hasn't started filming the tokusatsu special effects stuff yet. So I was in A for about, I want to say, 2-ish weeks. And then at some point, the Godzilla animatronic arrives at Toho Studios, and after that day, the Toho staff said, you know, this kid came all the way from New York City to work on a Godzilla film. Let's put him near Godzilla. So then they put me in Unit B, while the other production assistants were in Unit A. So I was like one of the few PAs on Shin Godzilla that was in Unit B. There was another PA with me as well. But to answer your question about what tasks I did, to put it simply, everything. As a production assistant, I had to make sure the offices were clean and organized. I set up the snack bars and made sure there was coffee and tea in the fridge, and there was hot coffee. And then once I got to B unit, I had to do a whole assortment of things, where cleaning up the debris from the explosions and mopping up Godzilla's blood off the floor. And so it was interesting. It was a very hectic experience physically, and it was very taxing. But emotionally, I was having the time of my life. It was fun. But at the end of the day, I'd get home to my aunt's house, because that's where I was staying in Japan. I'd just walk home and then just collapse immediately, and then wake up at 5 in the morning the next day and going back into the studio. Hey, I'm back.
So you mentioned explosions and Godzilla's blood. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure, absolutely. So a lot of the explosions that explode on Godzilla, they were shot on this chroma key ball. It's basically a blue ball with a bunch of explosives in different angles, and then they have a camera, or I think it was 2 cameras fixed on these 2 locations, and they'd be shooting this ball, and it would be exploding and stuff. And basically, obviously, when there's an explosion, there's a lot of debris that comes out of it, so I had to kind of like sweep that up, or if it catches on fire, just kind of like dab it with a wet towel. And for Godzilla's blood, it was kind of all over the floor, so it was a group effort to kind of like do a massive cleanup job on that. And that was also another thing that I was shocked by, is it wasn't just the PAs that were helping out with the cleaning and the organizing, it was like everybody. So as opposed to an American production in Hollywood where everyone gets a specific job and that person only does that job, in Japan everyone does kind of everything. Everyone multitasks, and even if you're the special effects director, you're also doing some other things as well. So that was kind of a big culture shock for me, where I sort of associated filmmaking with the Hollywood traditional style of filmmaking, where you do this, you're the scripty, you only hold the script. You're the PA, you have to be helping everyone else around you. But in a Japanese production, it was a lot more collaborative, and it felt more like a family unit, which became very fun because we all got very close with each other.
Did that sort of take some pressure off of you? Because I assume when you're on your way to Japan, you're like, oh my God, I'm about to work on a Godzilla movie. Like, like you get nervous and all, I imagine. But when you found out or discovered that it was everybody's here, we're on a team, we're working together, did that sort of make your job easier?
Absolutely. It really helped me out, not only physically, but emotionally. And again, I was so blessed to be working with maybe the greatest crew in the world, potentially. Everyone's so nice and they're all so skilled. And we really were having a fun time. No matter how serious and stressful it got, like all of us were very jovial and having a good time. And I think we were all sharing a beloved experience, because a lot of the guys that worked on the film also worked on a lot of other tokusatsu productions. So this is something that they really loved to do, and I felt that passion throughout. And we had some difficult moments where some shots just didn't work, and we had to figure different things out, but it all ended up being a very healthy working experience. So yes, I would say that environment was crucial to all of our happinesses on set.
Have you retained any relationships with the people you work with?
Yes, whenever I go to Japan, I meet some of the crew guys that I've gotten close to, and just catch up with them, see how they're doing, and also to catch up on what I've been doing as a filmmaker in New York City, because there's quite a bit of a distance between us and Japan, so I don't get to see them very much. So yeah, there are some people that I got to get close with, and I've met Shin Higuchi a few times after the production, and he even came to my hotel once just to hang out with me. There was me, Shin Higuchi, the AD, and the tokusatsu cinematographer. We were all in my hotel, and just they brought beers and stuff, and we were just having a good time. It was very fun.
So my next question was, like, did you work closely with any of the actors, producers, stuff like that? So pretty much Shin Higuchi, what's it like on and off set hanging out with Shin Higuchi? Words can't describe how much I love this man. Because it sounds like he went from being like your higher up to being like your buddy.
Yes, yeah, very much so. And he is obviously, him and Anno are the architect of this movie. And there's so much input that both of them have put on the film. And obviously they're the big director duo. So at first you might think it's a bit intimidating, as did I. When I first met him, I was a lot more kind of calm and cautious around him, but he's such an open, happy, jokey person, and he presents himself as this almost like a buffoon, but then when he gets to work, he's laser focused. So he's the type of person that sort of attracts you in by his sort of levity, but then when you see him at work, you can see how much of a visionary he really is, and that's something that I really admired about him, where he's able to balance the interpersonal relationship and make everyone feel happy and having a good time, and then when he needs to get stuff done, he really is in director mode and knows what he wants and aims to get the best product possible.
So he's a guy that knows how to have fun, but he's serious when he needs to be.
Exactly. He's not a director who, and it's funny because he's the direct opposite of Anno.
I was just about to ask that. Like, you think of Hideki Anno, like anybody who knows a thing about Anno knows that he's kind of a shy person, doesn't really like to be around people a lot. So it's sort of like on the one hand you have like the shy introvert, and then the other you have the friendly extrovert, and then their worlds collide, and then they make this like incredible production.
Right. They are the perfect yin and yang for each other almost, and I can see why they've become such close friends throughout the years, and seeing them together, which is kind of rare because I was in the B unit and they were mostly in the A unit. It's just a delight seeing them banter off each other, and Higuchi's more jovial personality, and Anno's very kind of, not stoic, but very closed off personality. It's very fun seeing them interact together. And the few interactions I had with Anno were very memorable. He is exactly who I thought he would be, but potentially even better because I've met him. It's just such an amusing thing to see, because he's kind of one of my heroes, because the movie End of Evangelion was kind of the reason why I wanted to become a filmmaker, and working underneath him was sort of seeing like Goliath in front of you, just sort of this massive figure of your life. And but then when you get to know him, he's, yes, quiet and reserved and shy, but he's very not as cold or distant as some people kind of portray him to be. He's very like soft-spoken, human, and very, very kind. So yeah, it was very interesting seeing them both working together and seeing the very different, drastic directing styles kind of not clashing, but somehow coalescing together in a beautiful sort of way. And that was very fun to see.
So let's bring it back to on set. Was there any day that stood out from all the rest?
The biggest one, I'd say, is when I got to see Godzilla with my own eyes, the animatronic. That day was glorious. I was in the office. I don't remember what I was doing, but I was in the office doing something, and one of my coworkers approached me and said, "Hey, Godzilla is here." And I thought, "What? Godzilla is here? What is that? Do you mean like Haruo Nakajima is here? What are you talking about?" And he said, "Oh, the animatronic is here." I thought, animatronic? I thought it was going to be a man in a suit or CG, because that's how we always known Godzilla, is either like you get the Gareth Edwards CGI Godzilla or you get the classic like man in a suit for the tokusatsu side. So I was kind of shocked by, oh, animatronic, that's interesting, okay. Because animatronics were only used for like certain shots, but like this is just, it's just this animatronic for the whole production. So I was like, okay, interesting. So he walks us over to the studio, and I see this red, zombified, rotten, disfigured dinosaur body. And this sounds like exaggeration, and I say it every time, but it sounds strange, but I just couldn't walk forward. It like struck me, and like, I just had a sense of fear like go down my spine. And after a moment, I was finally able to get close to him and take a good look, but it was quite shocking to see Godzilla look like that. It was a terrifying design. And I remember after everyone left, it was heaven, because it was just me alone in the studio with the animatronic.
You got to have personal time.
I got to have
with Godzilla.
I got to have my alone time, which like I didn't ask for, I didn't plan. Just everyone left for some reason, and there was one spotlight lighting Godzilla in the middle of the studio against a blue screen, and I just stood there. And I cried like a little boy.
Were you half expecting him to come alive and just turn to you and say like, "Yoko, you can do anything you put your mind to," like one of those cheesy moments in the movies?
Honestly, a little bit. Honestly, I swear to you, I thought, because like, you know, I thought this is Toy Story logic. If everyone's gone and I'm Andy, he will come to life and tell you like, welcome to a Godzilla set. Like you made it here. And then at some point, I just couldn't stop crying. It was just such an emotional, like lifelong sort of thing. And there was a moment as I was looking at him where like my brain sort of flashed back to when I first saw my first Godzilla movie, and like all these memories started flooding back, and I looked down and there was a puddle of my tears underneath me. It was such a emotional moment, and I was alone with him. And then I got some pictures with him, just alone with the animatronic, because I asked somebody, "Hey, can you take a picture with me?" And the Godzilla animatronic.
Get him some tissues. I think he's gonna start crying.
I'm gonna start crying again. The memories. But yeah, that was great. That was that day. I think there were so many other amazing days on set that I can like. I have endless stories of like the giving Anno his lunch, and like seeing Hideaki Anno with the Mad Max Fury Road V8 wheel. For some reason, he had that in his office.
Please elaborate on that.
For some reason, I was in the office and he walked in with the V8 like wheel or the steering wheel, and he just showed it off to everybody.
Just sort of like, hey, look what I got.
Hey, look at this. And it was such and they all loved Mad Max Fury Road, and that was the time when that came to theaters in Japan. And the cinematographer, who I'm now very close with, he was, or I don't know if he still is, he probably is, he was obsessed with Mad Max Fury Road. He saw it like every week in the theater. He can quote the entire movie even though it's in English, and he knows every action beat. And yeah, it was fun. And then Higuchi brought the wheel to set again, and then we played Mad Max Fury Road on a break, and the cinematographer was like driving the wheel as he was watching the movie. It was incredible. It was a weird sort of moment of like seeing these filmmakers geek out over another filmmaker's work, and that was very fun for me to see.
I want to kind of go off the rails a little bit. Talk about sort of like the film culture in Japan, and more specifically, the anticipation for this movie. Did you notice any sort of difference? Because when did you come back to the States?
I came back on I left Tokyo on December 1st, 2015.
Okay.
So it was quite, I believe 3 weeks after production ended, and I had some downtime, and then I left on December, and then I went back in late June of the next year, before the movie came out.
Okay, so you kind of got to experience anticipation of this movie in both countries. Is there like a difference in anticipation, or more rather, do the Japanese geek out over Godzilla like the Americans do? Because when I think of the American Godzilla fandom, I think like, we've got all these online groups, these message boards from back in the day, like there's like countless Instagram fan pages, like people really love Godzilla here. And do they geek out like us in Japan, or?
It's sort of a mix of both, because Godzilla, I guess for us, it's not the greatest example, but like Godzilla and Ultraman and Gamera, all these tokusatsu kaijus and heroes are kind of like our Marvel DC superheroes, where that is the most mainstream thing in the country. So I think for us Godzilla fans in the States, we're a lot more like, for lack of a better term, like feverish about Godzilla, because it's such a niche sort of franchise, at least here in the States as of right now. And I think that's why there's more passion for it, where we need to sort of like gather this community of a small group of people who really love Godzilla. But in Japan, pretty much everyone watches Godzilla, knows Godzilla, so it isn't as intense as it is in the States when you see these like hardcore Godzilla fans. But there are also the hardcore Godzilla fans in Japan too, who are also—
I imagine.
Yeah. So I think the everyday person is pretty much aware of Godzilla's existence, perhaps have seen 1 or 2 movies, and obviously like knows like it's about a giant dinosaur who comes out of the ocean and destroys Tokyo and goes back. But actually, speaking about Shin Godzilla to some of the other people who haven't known about Godzilla very much, people were surprised about the nuclear allegory. A lot of people have forgotten that Godzilla essentially is a bomb allegory, and that seemed to have been lost throughout the years of however many Godzilla sequels there have been. And basically, I think when people think of Godzilla, and which is fair, people think of like Godzilla fighting Mothra or King Ghidorah or Rodan, but a lot of people have sort of forgotten the nuclear allegory. So that was kind of a shock for the Japanese public when they saw Shin Godzilla. They went, "Oh, that's right, Godzilla is a nuclear allegory." But actually, I think the fandom in Japan was intensified because of Anno and Higuchi. That was sort of the big draw, that, oh my god, the guys who made Evangelion are making Godzilla. That was sort of the big draw for most people. And then that became a bigger cultural phenomenon after they saw the movie. So it was a bit of a different hype technique, I would say. Because Evangelion was a big draw in Japan at the time, and they even did a Godzilla vs. Evangelion like merch line in 2016 to make the point even more obvious that it was the creators of Evangelion doing Godzilla now. So, but I remember when I was there around its release, it was everywhere. There were posters for it on billboards, and that iconic Toho theaters with the Godzilla head had the big banner for Shin Godzilla on it. It really was a big event movie that like everyone was talking about it, and it was sold out like in theaters like everywhere. Even for me, I had to get tickets in advance with my family to like go out and see it. And every time I saw it, it was a packed theater, crowded with people. And then after you leave the theater, the lobby was crowded with people, and like people wearing Godzilla t-shirts, and like even like I saw like other Americans there, like who traveled all the way to come see the movie. So it was this big event, and that was sort of nice to see, since Toho hasn't made a Godzilla film since Final Wars at that time. So it was it really was a big return to form for Godzilla. So that was cool.
All right, so to bring it back onto set again, You are obviously an Anno fanatic. How hard was it to keep your composure the few times that you worked with him?
It was very, very hard. As a massive fan, seeing your hero in front of you is a daunting task. And when I first met him, I stupidly, I was wearing an Evangelion t-shirt this one day because in the morning I just, you're so tired from working on set all day that you just kind of pick up a shirt, you put it on, and you leave, and you don't even think about it. And I was wearing an Evangelion 2.0 shirt that day. It was like the scene where it was like the third impact and like Unit 1's like holding the core. And I go to the studio and I'm working at the office, quiet day, and then my coworker says, "Hey, so Anno is going to do a meeting across the studio space about previs, and he's going to do some reviews about the story. You want to go to that meeting?" And I said, "Well, I can't miss this opportunity. I'm not going to say no to this." So I'm walking over to the studio and I enter the office. I sit down and I thought, okay, it'll probably end in start in about 10 minutes or so, sure. And I looked down and I thought, oh my God, I'm wearing an Evangelion t-shirt. I was mortified that I didn't want him to come into the office, turn and see this 20-year-old kid with an Evangelion t-shirt. Like, that's the worst look you can possibly do. So the whole time Anno was there and doing the previous meeting, I folded my arms across my chest to hide the logo so that he doesn't see. But yes, it was such a intimidating but very surreal experience to work under him. And I remember the first time I gave him his lunch, I kind of went in the bathroom and cried because it was like, obviously Spielberg is a big hero of mine, and I thought like it's as big as me giving Spielberg his lunch. Like it's such a sort of surreal moment that I just couldn't believe was happening, and I had to pinch myself like, oh my God, this is really happening. And I'll actually tell you this story. This is actually offset. This is 2 years after production wrapped. This is when the Blu-ray was coming out. I went back to Japan to meet all the guys, to say hi and buy the Blu-ray. It was like March in 2017, I believe. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, they had this Shin Godzilla versus Evangelion concert symphony. Mm-hmm. And I went to that. And as I got to my seat, I heard, "Yoko, is that you?" And I said, "Who is that?" And it was Shinji Higuchi, the producer, the other producer, the cinematographer. It's like, "Oh, you're here. All of you are here." And they said, "Why are you here?" I'm like, "I'm here for this." I'm like, "Oh, you're cool, okay." And then
did they invite you to like, come to the cool section?
No. It's like I had my own. We all had our own like seats, so like we had to stick with our reserved sections. But so the concert is incredible. My mind was blown. I saw Shiro Sugisu, who was the composer for Shin Godzilla and Evangelion, at the concert hall, so that was incredible. And then after the concert ends, they're like, "Hey, Yoko, come with us. We'll go to a restaurant and like, eat together." And so I'm eating with the other crew guys, and at some point in the night, they said, "So we can go to the after party of the concert." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's happening." So we all get in 2 cars and we go out to this like venue, and then we walk in and there's like everybody. There's Anno, there's Shiro Sugisu, there's Higuchi, there's the voice actress for Rei, there's the singer of the Cruel Angel Thesis theme song. She's also there, and a bunch of people from Studio Kara were there, and I'm like at this complete state of euphoria.
Like, what did I do to deserve this greatness? Like, you were meeting like everybody in the outside, the cast of Evangelion, producers, directors. Like,
I'm like, I'm here right now. This is happening. This is for real. It was.
Where are the cameras? Am I being punked?
Like, this is a game show, right? This is one of the Japanese game shows where I get punked. Yeah. And so I'm there, and then one of the actors from Shin Godzilla. Do you remember the guy who he like smacks the water bottle on Yaguchi's chest? He's like, calm down.
Yeah.
So he and I got kind of close because he came to New York and I gave him a little tour. At the wrap party for Shin Godzilla, he was like, "Oh, you're from New York. I'm coming over. Do you want to meet up?" I said, "Yes." And I showed him around town and we like ate dinner together a few times. So we got kind of close, and he was there at the event. And he saw me, he was like, "Yoko." And I'm like, hey, what's going on? He goes, "Do you want to like meet Anno, talk to Anno?" I'm like, "Oh God, don't do this to me." And he said, no, okay. And he grabs my wrist and like drags me over. I'm like, "No, don't do this." And I see Ano from far away, and he's talking to like 3 other guys. I'm like, don't. Like, he's clearly busy. Don't do this. He's like, no.
I insist.
Yeah, I said, no, come over. And like he taps Ano's shoulder, like, hey, Ano. I'm like, oh no. And he's like, yeah, this was the production assistant on Shin Godzilla. And obviously he doesn't remember me, which like, of course I'm a PA. Like he's not gonna remember every PA on set. And he's like, oh hi, thank you for the good work. And I sort of in a long spiel, I said like, thank you for inspiring me. Because Evangelion was a reason why I wanted to become a filmmaker, and his first words were, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. And then he went, and then he said, the industry is very tough, and it's a very difficult place for any artist to go in, so just keep working.
At least he was honest.
Yeah, he's the kind of person who, for the life of him, can't take compliments well.
Right.
And he sees this like young kid who's like clearly like about to cry, seeing his hero, and he's like, okay, like I can't take the compliment. But that was one of the happiest moments of my life was to able to thank Ano for inspiring me to become a filmmaker. So that was such a dream come true.
Were his words like humbling in a way and sort of maybe put things into perspective? Like, he's right, this is a very tough industry, and I got this position just because I mailed off a few letters. Like, this was a million and one chance. Like, did his words like put things into perspective about your whole experience?
100%. And obviously, I don't have any illusions of the film industry, especially Hollywood, how difficult it is to break into the film industry. And actually, to hear those words felt more genuine and human, as opposed to, keep up the good work, good job, like you'll make it.
Sort of like that false positivity that people just say like, all right, cool, now get away from me.
Exactly. That was the most honest answer that anyone can give. And also, selfishly, it's the most Ano answer he can possibly give. So I was elated by that, I'm sorry. It was such a good lesson to hear my actual hero tell me like, this is a tough industry to get into. Like, you really have to work at it, and you're going to suffer to get in here. And I really appreciated those words. And after the years have gone on, I think those words have stuck with me even more so than it has when he first said that to me. Like, it really rings true.
It was words that you needed to hear.
Yes, it's not the ones that it's kind of ones that I wanted to hear because it's Ano.
Yeah.
but more than once, like you said, it really is what I needed to hear.
Right. Yeah. You are an independent filmmaker based here in New York, the Resistance Pictures. Have you, since being a PA on Shin Godzilla, have you implemented anything that you learned on set into your own filmmaking?
Yes. It wasn't anything in particular, but it was mostly time management. Because of the nature of the stress on the Shin Godzilla set, we worked speedily, quickly, efficiently, but also tried to be as safe as possible, because obviously it's not safe to be around explosives and
Godzilla's blood.
And like, they made those in the first scene when it's the second form of Godzilla causing all the floods, like all that water was practical, so like it's not a safe thing to do if you're not careful. So all of us had to very efficiently but quickly do everything in a manner that was safe and also true to what the vision was. And that mindset I brought back from Japan, and I tried to implement in my own productions, to say to my crew, we have to be as efficient as possible, but also at the same time do the effect or the shot that we need to do in a manner that fits the vision of the director, which is me. So it was a lot of lessons about time management, managing the crew, managing the actors, that kind of thing. So yeah, I grew a lot from that harsh experience working on Shin Godzilla. It was the most beautiful thing that's happened to me, but at the same time, it was the most grueling thing that's ever happened to me. And I want to like emphasize to everyone who's watching this, like, obviously it was a great experience in my life, but like it was suffering. It was a lot of hard work that all of us have went through. And if you really want to, do film, you have to be ready for the struggle and the hardship and the compromises you have to make. And Ano's words really rings true. It's tough. It really is tough, and you have to have like nerves of steel and the most willpower to get through any aspect of the film industry. So I tried to implement that as much as possible to my own independent films with Resistance Pictures.
But despite all that, you have some major clout amongst the Godzilla fans. You worked on an actual Godzilla film. You saw the Godzilla, you saw Godzilla himself. You met the director, the producer, you retained relationships with these people. So despite all that, I think you are probably top tier Godzilla fan in my opinion.
I constantly don't know if I deserve this clout. Like every time I hear someone like, oh, I found it. I found you out on the internet. I'm like, oh my God, I don't deserve this. I'm a PA. Like I'm just like a cog in a big machine. Like I don't deserve the praise yet. But I am truly flattered that like so many people have reached out to me about this story. And even now it's been almost 10 years since I walked onto that set. In 2 years, it'll be 10 years. And I'm 28 now, and I was 20 at the time when I worked on the film. And to hear so much love and like just gushing responses for not only the movie, but the production aspect, it's been very humbling for me. So I just want to thank everyone who has reached out. It's been such a journey, and thank you for having me here.
Of course.
Like, it's always fun reminiscing about that time in my life.
You mentioned that, oh, I'm just a PA, I don't deserve all this. Were you expecting like all the crazy things that happened because of this position to happen? Were you just expecting like, all right, I'm gonna go to Japan, just basically be a glorified intern and fly back?
I honestly did not think like this right now. I had no idea this was happening. I didn't think people would notice, and like I didn't even need people to notice. This really was just for me. Like as a Godzilla fan, I didn't think about having the story be told or be recognized. I just really wanted to see the set and work on it and then have my name scroll up in the credits, and like that was all my ambitions really. But then somehow the story got wind and people started to notice me, and it's been such a wild ride, because again, like I really am just a PA. Like I haven't done anything in the movie, and people are like you did such great work. I'm like, no, I didn't. It was all
I did was mop up Godzilla's blood.
It was all of them. They are the geniuses. I just helped them. I didn't do anything. So again, like I am so grateful that everyone has been so kind to me and loving, but at the same time, like in my head, I'm like, do I deserve this? I haven't really done anything.
It's that imposter syndrome.
It's the imposter syndrome. Thank you. But I think the greatest thing for me about this whole experience, about this story coming out, is it's the fact that I was able to give insight about the production of it to other people. Because I think a lot of times you don't hear stories about productions on even Hollywood film sets. You don't hear about a PA's story about working on Avengers Endgame or like Avatar: The Way of Water. You don't really know how films are made besides what the behind the scenes clips tell you.
Right.
So I love the opportunity of actually giving my own personal experience some sort of attention to show other people like me who are up and coming filmmakers like what it's really like to work in a film set. And that has been the most valuable thing for me, because like I didn't have that when I was young. When I was 20 at the time, I couldn't hear about stories about production sets. Like I only heard about stories from like the directors who did interviews like long after the fact. But that's not like, it's more of a creative decision with them.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like I saw all the technical aspects of the film. So that part has been very nice, of like just informing people of like how movies are made and how hard it is, and sharing my struggles.
Yeah, man, you give people perspective, because anyone, like when I was a kid, I was always like, oh, I'm gonna grow up, I'm gonna make my own movies, I'm gonna be just like Spielberg, and like thinking it's so easy, but it's grueling work, and so like I think that's why you and your story is so essential, because like it gives some realistic, real world perspective of like, hey, it's not all just like dream it and you can do it, but kind of basically what Ano said, like, oh, I'm sorry, it's a grueling, like you actually, like people listen to you and they'll be like, oh, okay, here's what I have to expect, and like how I can prepare for something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
Kaiju United, Yoko Higuchi.
Thank you so much for having me, guys, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on, man.
No, of course, thank you. On set, there was like this two ongoing gags just throughout the production, where I share the last name as Shinji Higuchi, even though I'm not related to him. So everyone thought I was his like son or cousin or nephew or something, and like every other day it's like someone would lean over and go like, are you? Like, and they always like look around. Like, I'm like, is it a crime? Like what's happening? And they like every time they just kind of
The ghost is clear.
Yeah.
Are you related to director Higuchi?
Right, left. Are you his son? Like, no. I just share his last name. Like, there's no relation. And like his, yeah. And
It's not a common last name, I imagine.
It's like mildly. It's not as common, but it's like there are a few people named Higuchi out there, and there's like different ways to spell Higuchi, but coincidentally, my way of spelling his name in kanji is the same as his, so it's like it led to even more confusion after that.
So it's kind of like the name Frederick. Like I've seen one of my friends, his last name is Frederick, but I also have seen his last name spelled a million different ways.
Exactly, it's the same thing, and like we so happen to have it be spelled the exact same way, so people were like, is this nepotism? It's like, no. I swear to you.
Conflict of interest?
Conflict of interest? I'm like, no. I swear to you, I'm not. And then the other gag was that like there was an American on set, and it's like, who was the American guy? It's like, it's me. And they're like, oh, you're the American one. I'm like, yeah, it was me. And obviously I look like this. I look Japanese, so they can't tell. So they're like, oh, you're the American one on set. I'm like, oh, yeah, is that a thing? It's like, oh yeah, like people were like talking about like, oh, there's an American on set or something. It's like, what is going on?